The restaurant smelled of rosemary and loneliness, and Harper Thorne was the only person left to notice. Christmas Eve stretched before her like an accusation. The Edison bulbs overhead cast warm amber pools across 23 empty tables, each draped in cream linen that would remain pristine because no one was coming. Her manager had called that morning, voice tight with apology, explaining that the owner decided to close early after all the reservations canceled. Everyone wanted to be home tonight. Everyone except Harper, apparently, whose home was a studio apartment with a window unit that rattled and a television that only got 3 channels. She told him she'd come in anyway. The words had left her mouth before she could stop them. Pride and desperation tangled together. She needed the hours. She needed the distraction. She needed to not spend another holiday alone with her thoughts and cheap wine and the echo of her mother's voice saying that someday, sweetheart, someday you'll have your own family. That was before the cancer, before the funeral, before Harper learned that someday could be taken back without warning. So here she stood, 24 years old in a starched white blouse and black slacks, polishing wine glasses that would never be used when the phone rang. Lumiere, this is Harper speaking. Yes, good evening. The voice was smooth as velvet, accented in a way she couldn't place something European, maybe, old-world elegant. I require every table in your establishment tonight. Harper blinked at her reflection in the polished glass. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Every table, all 23, I believe, for this evening. Sir, we're actually about to close early and I will pay triple your standard reservation fee per table. Her hand tightened on the phone. That would be nearly $7,000. Impossible. A prank, surely. Some cruel joke on the lonely waitress working Christmas Eve. I don't think. The name for the reservation is Konstantin Bathory. My card details are on file from a previous engagement with your establishment. Verify them. I will arrive at 9 o'clock precisely. The line went dead. Harper stood there for a long moment, phone pressed to her ear before slowly lowering it. The rational part of her brain said this was insane. The desperate part that needed rent money and validation that she wasn't completely invisible in the world said to at least check. She logged into the reservation system with trembling fingers. The name appeared in their database immediately, Konstantin Bathory, a platinum member, whatever that meant. 3 previous reservations over the past 5 years, each one marked with a note in the manager's handwriting. VIP accommodate all requests. Her mouse hovered over the credit card information. She shouldn't. This violated probably a dozen privacy policies. She clicked anyway. The card was real. The billing address was an estate in the countryside, 40 miles north, and when she pulled up the account history, her breath caught this man had spent tens of thousands of dollars at Lumiere over the years, always alone, always ordering the wine tasting menu with no food, just wine, never food. A cold prickle ran down her spine, but Harper had already made her decision. She called the manager, explained the situation, listened to his shocked stammering before he told her to do whatever Mr. Bathory wanted. She was authorized to charge the card immediately. When the payment went through without a hitch, Harper set down the phone and looked at the empty restaurant with new eyes. Someone was coming. Someone wanted to be here, tonight, with her, even if she didn't understand why. She spent the next 2 hours in a frenzy of preparation, fresh candles on every table, new flower arrangements from the walk-in cooler, white roses and holly. She polished silver until her arms ached, pressed napkins into perfect peaks, aligned chairs with geometric precision. The kitchen was dark and cold, but she didn't need it. This mysterious Konstantin Bathory only wanted wine anyway. At 8:57, she checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror one last time. Her dark hair was escaping its bun in wisps around her face, and there were shadows under her hazel eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. She looked tired. She looked lonely. She looked like someone who needed a miracle. The front door chimed at exactly 9 o'clock. Harper turned from the host stand, a professional greeting on her lips, and forgot how to breathe. The man who entered moved like silk over stone, each step precisely measured yet utterly fluid. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car. But it was his appearance that rooted her to the spot, skin pale as moonlight, hair the color of freshly fallen snow falling in waves past his shoulders, and eyes like frozen silver that caught the candlelight and threw it back transformed. He was beautiful in a way that didn't seem quite human, beautiful in a way that made her heart kick against her ribs in warning and want all at once. "Good evening." His voice was the same velvet she'd heard on the phone, but richer in person, resonating in her chest. "You must be Harper." Yes, Mr. Bathory." She hated how breathless she sounded. "Konstantin, please." He glanced around the restaurant, taking in the prepared tables, the candles, the flowers. Something shifted in his expression. Satisfaction, perhaps, or relief. "It is perfect, thank you." "I don't understand." The words escaped before professionalism could stop them. "Why did you reserve every table?" Those silver eyes returned to her, and Harper felt pinned like a butterfly under glass. Not threatened, exactly. Just seen in a way that made her skin prickle with awareness. "Because," he said softly, "no one should work Christmas Eve alone. And if you must work, then you should not have to watch empty tables and wonder why you were not somewhere else. This way, every table is full. You are needed here, wanted here." Harper's throat closed. She blinked hard against the sudden sting of tears, mortified and moved in equal measure. That's incredibly kind. And expensive. Money is meaningless without purpose." He moved past her, bringing with him a scent like winter night and old libraries. "May I sit?" "Anywhere you like. You've certainly paid for the privilege." Was that amusement in his eyes? "Indeed. But I think... here." He chose a table near the window, where the street outside showed soft falling snow illuminated by vintage lampposts, a Christmas card scene. Harper followed, pulling out her order pad by instinct. "Can I start you with wine? The sommelier's gone for the evening, but I have no need for wine tonight." Konstantin settled into his chair with that same liquid grace. "Sit with me instead." "I what?" "You heard me correctly." He gestured to the chair across from him. "I reserved every table so you would not be alone. That rather defeats the purpose if you remain on your feet serving." "I can't just sit down with a customer. I am not a customer tonight, Harper Thorne. I am someone who recognized loneliness in a reservation book and decided to do something about it." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Please, sit." She should refuse. This was wildly inappropriate. Her manager would fire her if he found out she spent the evening chatting with a guest instead of working, even if that guest had paid for the entire restaurant. Harper sat. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "How did you even know I'd be here alone?" Konstantin was silent for a moment, his fingers tracing the edge of the tablecloth. "I called to make a reservation 3 days ago. The manager explained that the restaurant would be closing early due to lack of bookings. I asked if anyone would be here regardless, unable to go home. He mentioned you, said you'd volunteered to work even though there were no reservations because you had nowhere else to be." Heat flooded her cheeks. "That's pathetic. That is human." The correction was gentle but firm. "You are not pathetic for grieving, for finding empty rooms more tolerable than empty homes." Harper's head snapped up. "How did you... Your mother passed 8 months ago. You mentioned it in conversation with my server the last time I dined here. You likely do not remember it was a brief comment while you covered another section. But I remember." She did not remember that. Could not fathom why this strange, beautiful man would remember such a throwaway comment from months ago. Unless... "You're not just here out of kindness, are you?" Harper searched his face, trying to understand. "You know what this feels like." Something flickered in those silver eyes. Pain, old and deep. "I do," he said simply. "I know what it is to be alone on a night when the world celebrates togetherness. I know what it is to be surrounded by empty chairs and wonder if anyone would notice if you simply disappeared." "That's dark," but her voice held no judgment, only recognition. "Yes." A pause. "I do not do Christmas typically. My kind..." He stopped abruptly, jaw tightening. "Your kind?" Konstantin seemed to wrestle with something internal before meeting her eyes again. There was a strange intensity in his gaze now, almost challenging. "I am not human, Harper. I am vampire. and before you flee or faint or call for help, know that I mean you no harm. I have never harmed anyone in this establishment. I come here because the wine is excellent and the atmosphere is peaceful, and no one asks questions when I eat nothing and drink everything." Harper sat very still. Her brain was trying to process the words, to find the joke or the metaphor. But something in his utter stillness, in the way the candlelight didn't quite catch in his eyes the way it should, in the impossible pallor of his skin. "You're serious?" "Entirely." "Prove it." His eyebrows rose a fraction. "You're taking this rather well." "My mother died of cancer at 49. I watched her waste away for 2 years. I stopped believing the world made sense a long time ago." Harper leaned forward. "So prove it. Show me." For the first time, Konstantin smiled a real smile, not the polite curve of lips he'd shown before. And when he smiled, Harper saw the fangs. They were elegant, those fangs, nothing like the grotesque movie prosthetics. They looked natural, deadly, beautiful. They looked real. "Oh my God," she whispered. You're a vampire." "I am the vampire," he corrected, and there was no arrogance in it, only fact. "Konstantin Bathory, king of the northern courts, which is why I'm here tonight instead of presiding over the midwinter rite in my throne room, and why I will likely face a reckoning for my absence, and why I find I do not care." Harper's mind spun. The midwinter rite, his expression shuddered. An ancient tradition, a test of strength and ruthlessness meant to prove the king worthy of his crown. It involves cruelty, systematic cruelty against those who have no power to fight back, to demonstrate dominance. His hands curled into fists on the table. "I have presided over it for 3 centuries. This year I could not stomach the thought, so I fled. I called a restaurant where I once met a sad-eyed waitress who mentioned her mother's death, and I reserved every table so that for one night, neither of us would have to face our particular darkness alone." The confession hung between them, raw and real. Harper realized her hand had moved across the table of its own accord, stopping just short of touching his. "That took courage," she said, "walking away from something everyone expects of you. Or cowardice." "No." She closed the remaining distance, her warm fingers covering his cold ones. "Courage. Anyone can do the easy thing. You chose the hard thing, because it was right." Konstantin stared at their joined hands as if he'd never seen such a thing before. "You should fear me." "Probably. I'm apparently very bad at self-preservation." Harper smiled, feeling something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen since her mother's funeral. "But you paid $7,000 to keep me company on Christmas Eve, so either you're the world's most elaborate serial killer or you're a lonely vampire king who wanted to do something kind. I'm betting on the latter." "You barely know me." "True. So tell me about yourself. We've got all night and 23 tables to sit at." She squeezed his hand gently. "Unless you have somewhere else to be?" He turned his hand over, interlacing their fingers. His skin was cool, but not unpleasantly so, like touching marble that had been sitting in shade. "There is nowhere else I would rather be," Konstantin said, and Harper believed him. They talked for hours. Harper learned that he was nearly 400 years old, that he'd been turned during a plague that ravaged his homeland, that he'd spent centuries consolidating power among vampire kind, because the alternative was chaos and bloodshed. He spoke of loneliness that stretched across decades, of watching the world change while remaining fundamentally unchanged himself. "Do you ever wish you could go back?" Harper asked. They'd moved to a different table, near the fireplace she'd lit earlier. "Be human again?" "Sometimes. Mortality has a sweetness to it. Everything matters more because it ends. But I cannot unmake what I am." He studied her face in the firelight. "Do you wish your mother was still here?" "Every day, every single day. Tell me about her." So Harper did. She told him about her mother's terrible jokes and her legendary Christmas cookies, about how she'd always made their tiny apartment feel like a home, about the traditions they'd shared. The words poured out of her, grief and love tangled together, and Konstantin listened with the kind of attention that felt like a gift. "We always decorated the tree together on Christmas Eve," Harper finished, wiping her eyes. "She'd make hot chocolate with too many marshmallows, and we'd untangle lights while watching terrible holiday movies. It was our thing. I couldn't bring myself to do it alone this year. Couldn't even buy a tree." Konstantin was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, offering his hand. "Come with me." "Where?" "You will see." Harper let him lead her to the restaurant's front entrance. Through the window she could see the snow falling heavier now, coating the street in white. The shops across the way had long since closed, their windows dark except for one, a small boutique with a display of Christmas decorations still lit. "Wait here," Konstantin said, and before she could respond, he was gone, not walking away. Gone, moving so fast her eyes couldn't track the motion. He returned 30 seconds later, carrying a small potted pine tree, still decorated with lights and ornaments, trailing a price tag. Did you break into that store?" "I left money, substantially more than the tree is worth." He set it on the host stand, then produced a thermos from somewhere in his coat. "The coffee shop 2 blocks over had cocoa mix. I took liberties with their espresso machine." Harper stared at him. This ancient vampire king, this powerful, immortal being, had just shoplifted a Christmas tree and made her hot chocolate because she'd mentioned her mother's tradition. She burst into laughter, the kind that came from deep in the belly, helpless and bright. Konstantin watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I failed to see the humor." "You're ridiculous," Harper gasped, still laughing. "You're absolutely ridiculous and wonderful and—" She stopped, awareness flooding through her. "Oh no. What is wrong?" "I'm falling for you." The words came out hushed, shocked. "I've known you for 3 hours and I'm falling for you." His silver eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Harper, I know it's crazy. I know this is one night and you're vampire royalty, and I'm just a waitress who can't even afford to fix her car's transmission, but—" Konstantin crossed the distance between them in a blur, his hands cupping her face with infinite gentleness. "You are not just anything," he said fiercely. "You are Harper Thorne, who volunteers to work alone on Christmas Eve because you cannot bear empty apartments, who takes the confession of monsters with courage and curiosity instead of fear, who makes me remember what it feels like to want something beyond duty and survival." His thumb brushed her cheek, tracing the path of a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "I came here tonight to ease your loneliness and found you have eased mine instead. If you are falling, know that I am already fallen." Harper's breath caught. "Konstantin." The front window exploded inward. Glass showered across the floor as 3 figures entered through the shattered frame, moving with that same impossible speed. They were all pale-skinned and white-haired like Konstantin, but where his beauty held warmth beneath the ice, theirs was cold all the way through. 2 men and a woman, dressed in formal attire that seemed centuries out of date. Konstantin moved faster than thought, placing himself between Harper and the intruders. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Lucian, Isolde, Dmitri." His voice was pure winter frost. "You overstep." The woman Isolde smiled without an ounce of warmth. "Do we, my king? Or do you overstep by abandoning your throne on the most sacred night of our calendar?" Her red eyes fixed on Harper. And with a human, no less. How disappointingly predictable. "My movements are not subject to your approval. They are when your absence threatens the stability of the court." The larger male Dmitri moved closer, and Harper saw his hand rest on what looked like an ornate dagger at his belt. "The rite of midwinter must be completed. The executions must be witnessed by the crown. It is law." "Then the law is wrong." Konstantin's words rang with command. "I will not preside over the murder of innocents to prove my strength. Find another way to demonstrate power." Lucian laughed. "A sound like breaking bone. There is no other way. This is tradition stretching back millennia. You cannot simply decide it no longer suits you. I am king. I can decide whatever I wish. You are king until you prove yourself unworthy of the crown." Isolde's smile sharpened. "And refusing the right is grounds for challenge. We could end you here tonight, and the council would thank us for removing a weak ruler." Harper felt ice in her veins that had nothing to do with vampire proximity. "You're going to kill him for refusing to murder people?" "Silence, human." Dimitri's eyes narrowed. "This does not concern you." "Like hell it doesn't." Harper stepped out from behind Konstantin, ignoring his sharp intake of breath. "He's here because your stupid tradition is barbaric and he's brave enough to say so. If you kill him for that, you're not strong. You're just cowards hiding behind tradition because you're too scared to change." The three vampires stared at her as if she'd sprouted a second head. Konstantin's hand found hers, squeezing in what might have been warning or gratitude. "You dare speak to the Council of Elders in such a manner?" Isolde hissed. "I dare because someone should." Harper's heart was trying to jackhammer out of her chest, but she held her ground. "What you're describing isn't strength. It's just cruelty. Real strength is what Konstantin showed tonight, choosing compassion when violence would be easier. Walking away from power to do what's right." "Foolish child." Dmitri drew his dagger, the blade gleaming silver in the candlelight. "You understand nothing of our ways." "Then explain it to me." Harper raised her chin. "Explain how killing helpless people makes you strong. Explain how threatening your own king for showing mercy makes your society worth preserving. I'm listening." Silence stretched taut. The three elders exchanged glances, something unreadable passing between them. Finally, Lucian spoke, his voice carefully neutral. "The right was established in a time of war. When showing weakness meant annihilation by enemies who would exploit any perceived softness, it was practical once. But you are not at war now," Konstantin said quietly. "We have not been at war for 2 centuries, yet we continue the right because we fear what it means to stop. We fear appearing weak before our own people." "Yes," Isolde admitted, the single word clearly costing her. "So change the test." Harper looked between them, desperate. "Find a new way to prove strength that doesn't require murder. Konstantin already proved himself by standing up to you, by walking away from the easy choice. If you can't see that as strength, then maybe you're the ones who don't deserve power." The words hung in the air, dangerous and true. Harper braced for violence, for retaliation. Instead, Isolde began to laugh genuine, surprised laughter. "She is magnificent," the elder vampire said, looking at Konstantin with something like respect. "And she is not wrong. We have been cowards, hiding behind tradition rather than admitting times have changed." She sheathed an ornamental blade Harper hadn't noticed her drawing. "I propose an alternative to the midwinter rite," Dmitri frowned. "Isolde, hear me out. What if the test became one of leadership rather than cruelty? The king must demonstrate the ability to unite factions, to inspire loyalty, to make difficult choices for the good of all." Her gaze returned to Harper. "Konstantin brought a human into vampire politics and made her argue our side. That shows influence, strategy, power of a different kind." Lucian nodded slowly. "It would be unprecedented, but not without merit." "The council would need to approve," Dmitri said, but his hand had left his dagger. "Not all will accept such a dramatic change." "Then we convince them." Konstantin's voice rang with authority. "We present this as evolution, not weakness, adaptation to a new age, and if they refuse—" His expression hardened. "Then I will challenge for the right to rule my way. I will not compromise on this." The three elders studied him for a long moment. Then, in unison, they inclined their heads in a gesture that looked like acknowledgement, if not quite submission. "We will convene the council tomorrow night," Isolde said. "Present your case. But know this, Konstantin, if you fail, if the others demand the old ways, you will face true challenge, blood challenge. Are you prepared for that?" "I am." "And the human?" Dmitri's eyes fixed on Harper. "What becomes of her? She has seen too much, knows too much." Harper's breath froze. She hadn't considered that angle. In every vampire story, the human who learned the truth either died or, "She is under my protection," Konstantin said, his tone brooking no argument. "Anyone who harms her answers to me personally. That may not be sufficient if the council... It will be sufficient because I will make it so." He drew Harper against his side, the gesture both possessive and protective. "She is mine, and I am hers. That is the end of discussion." The words sent a shiver through Harper that had nothing to do with fear. His. The casual claim should have felt presumptuous, but instead, it felt like safety, like belonging. Isolde's lips curved in something almost like a smile. "Very well, we leave you to your Christmas Eve. But we expect you at court tomorrow by nightfall. Do not make us retrieve you again. I will be there." The three elders departed as quickly as they'd arrived, blurring through the broken window and into the snowy night. Their absence left a vacuum that slowly filled with the normal sounds of the world, the hiss of the fireplace, the distant sound of church bells, Harper's ragged breathing. "Are you hurt?" Konstantin turned her gently, checking for cuts from the glass. "I'm fine. Terrified, but fine." Harper laughed shakily. "Did I just involve myself in vampire politics?" "You did. Foolishly and bravely." His hands framed her face again, tilting it up to meet his eyes. "You could have stayed silent. Should have stayed silent. Why did you defend me?" "Because they were wrong. Because you were right." She covered his hands with hers. "Because I meant what I said earlier. I'm falling for you, Konstantin. Maybe I already fell, and I couldn't stand there and watch them threaten you for being good." "Good." He said the word like he was tasting it, testing its shape. "I have been many things across 4 centuries, powerful, ruthless when necessary, strategic, but no one has called me good in a very long time." "Then they haven't been paying attention." Konstantin kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, giving her space to pull away. But Harper pressed closer instead, her hands fisting in his jacket, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and sweet. He was careful with her. She could feel the restraint in every movement, the awareness of his own strength. But beneath the control was real feeling, real want. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Konstantin rested his forehead against hers. "I should not do this," he whispered. "I should send you away, keep you safe from the complications of my world." "Too late. I'm already complicated." Harper smiled against his lips. "And I don't want safe. I want you." "I am dangerous, Harper. Even beyond tonight's dramatics, I am vampire. There are things about my nature that... Do you want to hurt me? Never. Do you want to control me, keep me prisoner, use me? Of course not. Then we'll figure out the rest." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Unless you don't actually want this, if I misread everything tonight, if you just wanted to do a nice thing and I'm making it weird." He kissed her again, more insistently this time, and Harper forgot what she was going to say, forgot to worry, forgot everything except the feel of him, the taste of him, the impossible reality of this moment. When they separated again, she was grinning like an idiot. "Okay, so we both want this." Desperately. Konstantin stroked her hair back from her face, his expression tender. "But I must warn you, vampire relationships are not casual. When we choose someone, it is absolute, forever if they will have us. I do not offer a temporary affair, Harper. I offer everything." Her heart kicked hard. "That's a big offer for a first date." "This is not a date. This is a claiming." He said it matter-of-factly, no apology in his tone. "I am Vampire King. I do not court casually. Either you are mine and I am yours, completely, or we walk away now before the bond deepens further." Harper should have been terrified, should have run screaming. But standing in the ruins of the restaurant, glass scattered across the floor and a stolen Christmas tree on the host stand, and this beautiful, impossible man looking at her like she was his whole world. "I'm yours," she said, "and you're mine. Completely." Konstantin's smile was radiant. "Then we seal it properly." How do vampires seal oh? Understanding flooded through her as his meaning became clear. "You want to turn me. Not tonight, not until you are absolutely certain, but eventually, yes. I want to turn you, bind you to me, give you forever." His thumb traced her lower lip. "I want to ensure you never spend another Christmas alone, never face another loss without someone beside you. I want centuries with you, Harper Thorne. But only if you want them too." She should ask for time to think, to process, to be rational about a decision that would fundamentally alter her existence. "Yes," Harper said instead. "Not tonight, like you said. Let me have a little time to get used to the idea, to settle my affairs, but yes, I want forever with you." "You are certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything." And it was true. Standing here with Konstantin felt like the first right thing in her life since her mother's death, like finding home in the last place she expected. Then it is done. Konstantin pulled her close, tucking her against his chest. "You are mine, and I am yours. The council can object, the world can end, nothing will change this." Harper wrapped her arms around him, feeling his unnecessary heartbeat against her ear, slow and steady, a concession to appearing human. What happens tomorrow, at the council meeting? I argue for changing the rite, convince them that strength can take new forms, and if they refuse, his arms tightened, then I fight for the right to rule as I see fit. I will not back down on this. I'll be there with you. Absolutely not. If violence erupts, then I'll be there anyway. She pulled back to look at him. You don't get to claim me as yours and then shut me out when things get dangerous. We're partners now. That means I stand with you. He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him. You are incredibly stubborn. You say that like it's a bad thing. It is going to make eternity very interesting. They stood there in the quiet, holding each other, until Konstantin glanced at the small tree he'd stolen. We never decorated it, he said, or drank the chocolate. Harper laughed. Are you seriously thinking about hot cocoa after everything that just happened? You said it was tradition, your mother's tradition. His expression was soft. I think she would want you to keep it, even now, especially now. Tears pricked her eyes again, but they were the good kind. Yeah, she would. So they decorated the tree together, hanging ornaments, while Harper explained the significance of each one. Konstantin proved to be terrible at untangling lights, which was somehow endearing on a centuries-old vampire king. They drank lukewarm hot chocolate and talked about everything and nothing her childhood, his turning, their hopes for a future that suddenly seemed possible instead of empty. At midnight, the church bells tolled Christmas Day, and Konstantin pulled Harper into his arms. Merry Christmas, my heart. Merry Christmas, my vampire king. They kissed as snow fell outside the broken window, the restaurant a disaster around them, and Harper had never felt more content. The next evening, Harper stood in what Konstantin called the outer receiving chamber of his estate and tried not to gape. The building was a mansion hidden beneath the city, accessible through a network of underground passages that emerged in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Inside, it was pure Gothic luxury. Vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, tapestries that were probably priceless, and enough marble to build a cathedral. You live here? She asked faintly. I rule from here. Konstantin was dressed in formal attire, now black suit, silver brocade vest, his hair pulled back in a way that emphasized the sharp beauty of his face. He looked every inch the king. My private chambers are more comfortable. You will see them later. Presumptuous. Accurate. He took her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Are you ready? Harper looked down at herself. She'd gone home that morning to shower and change. Settling on the nicest dress, she owned a simple black sheath that Konstantin had eyed with approval. Still, she felt underdressed for vampire royalty. As ready as I'll ever be. What do I need to know? The council consists of 12 elders, including Isolde, Lucian, and Dmitri. They are old, traditional, and resistant to change, but they respect strength and conviction. He squeezed her hand. Let me do most of the talking. If they address you directly, be honest, but cautious. And remember, you are under my protection. They cannot harm you without declaring war on the crown. That's comforting in a terrifying way. Welcome to vampire politics. They entered the council chamber together. It was a vast circular room with 12 stone thrones arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by a white-haired vampire in formal dress. At the center was a larger, more ornate throne, clearly meant for Konstantin. The floor was polished obsidian, reflecting the candlelight from dozens of iron chandeliers overhead. Every eye turned to them as they entered. The weight of 12 immortal gazes was nearly physical. Konstantin led her to stand beside his throne rather than sit. A deliberate choice, Harper realized. Standing showed he considered this a negotiation, not a judgment. Council, he said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber, thank you for convening on such short notice. We had little choice given your unprecedented absence from the midwinter rite. The speaker was an ancient-looking male vampire with scars crossing his pale face. Explain yourself, Konstantin. I refuse to preside over the execution of innocents. The rite has outlived its purpose. It demonstrates cruelty, not strength, and I will not continue it. Murmurs rippled through the council. Another elder, a woman with silver jewelry braided into her white hair, leaned forward. The rite is sacred tradition. It proves the king has the stomach for difficult decisions. Difficult decisions, yes. Murder for spectacle, no. Konstantin's tone was firm. I propose we reform the test. Let the king demonstrate leadership, strategy, the ability to unite and inspire. These are skills more valuable in modern knights than the capacity for casual violence. And if we refuse, Scarface asked, if we demand the old ways, then I challenge the council for the right to rule as I see fit. Shocked silence. Apparently challenging the council was not commonly done. Isolde rose from her throne, drawing all attention. Before we dismiss this out of hand, hear me. I witnessed Konstantin last night facing a human who had every reason to fear him, who had just learned of our existence. She did not cower. She argued philosophy with elders, defended our king's choice, and demonstrated courage most of our kind lack. Her red eyes found Harper. Human. Tell the council why you defended Konstantin. Harper's mouth went dry. Every vampire in the room was staring at her. Konstantin's hand found the small of her back, steadying. She cleared her throat. Because what you were asking him to do was wrong. Not just morally wrong, but strategically wrong. The words came easier as she found her footing. You want to know if your king is strong enough to lead. But strength isn't just violence. It's knowing when to walk away from a fight. It's changing course when circumstances demand it. Konstantin could have presided over your right and maintained tradition. Instead, he risked everything to do what he believed was right. That's real strength. Pretty words from a human who knows nothing of our world, the scarred elder sneered. You're right. I don't know your world, but I know leadership. I know the difference between a ruler people follow out of fear and one they follow out of respect. Harper met his gaze steadily. Which kind do you want? Lucian stood now, his expression thoughtful. She makes a valid point. We have relied on fear for centuries, but fear breeds resentment, and resentment breeds rebellion. Perhaps it is time for a new approach. Blasphemy, another elder hissed. The old ways have served us well. Have they? Dmitri rose, adding his voice. We have had 3 attempted coups in the last century alone. Our young vampires flee to establish their own territories rather than remain under court rule. The humans grow more technologically advanced every year, and we hide in shadows rather than adapting. He looked at Konstantin. What exactly do you propose as the new test? Konstantin's posture straightened, regal and commanding. A trial of 3 parts. First, the king must demonstrate strategic thinking by resolving a current court conflict without violence. Second, the king must prove the ability to bridge divides by gaining the loyalty of a faction previously opposed to the crown. Third, the king must show vision by proposing and implementing a policy that strengthens our society for the future. And you believe you can accomplish this? The woman with silver jewelry asked. I have already begun. Konstantin's hand settled possessively on Harper's shoulder. I have bridged the oldest divide of all vampire and human. I have claimed a human mate, and I will turn her with the intent of bringing her fully into court society. She will be the first human-turned-vampire to hold official rank in 3 centuries. The chamber erupted in objections and arguments. Harper felt dizzy as the implications sank in. He wasn't just turning her, he was making her part of the power structure. You cannot be serious, Scarface sputtered. A human bride? It is degrading to your position. It is innovative, Isolde countered. If the king can successfully integrate a human into vampire society, train her in our ways, and prove her worthy of rank, that demonstrates considerable skill. It demonstrates weakness, another elder spat. Does it? Konstantin's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. I am the oldest vampire in this room, the strongest. I have held the crown for 3 centuries against all challengers. I do not need to prove my strength through violence. My history speaks for itself. What I propose is evolution, growth, the courage to change what no longer serves us. If you cannot see that as strength, then perhaps you are not qualified to judge it. The silence that followed was absolute. Harper held her breath, waiting. Finally, Isolde spoke. I call for a vote. All in favor of implementing Konstantin's proposed trial system, raise your hand. Isolde's hand went up, then Lucian's. Dmitri hesitated, then raised his as well. The woman with silver jewelry followed. 5 more hands slowly lifted, not quite a majority of the council, but close. 7 votes. They needed 7 votes out of 12. The scarred elder stared at Konstantin for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with obvious reluctance, he raised his hand. 8 votes, a majority. "It is decided," Isolde announced. "The midwinter rite is reformed. Konstantin Bathory will complete the 3 trials to prove his fitness for the crown under the new system. Should he fail, we will revisit the matter." Konstantin inclined his head, accepting the terms. "When do the trials begin?" "Immediately. There's a dispute between the eastern and western territories over hunting grounds. Resolve it within 1 month without bloodshed. That will be your first trial." Isolde's smile was sharp. "Do try not to disappoint us, my king." The council session ended shortly after, the elders departing in 2s and 3s, until only Konstantin, Harper, and Isolde remained. "That was well done," the elder said, her tone almost approving. "You handled them expertly." "I had help." Konstantin drew Harper against his side. "Thank you for your support, Isolde." "Do not thank me yet. I voted for this because I'm curious to see if it works, not because I'm convinced. Fail, and I will be the first to call for your head." But her expression softened slightly as she looked at Harper. "However, I admit you chose well. She has spine. We will make a proper vampire of her yet." After Isolde left, Harper sagged against Konstantin, the adrenaline finally draining away. "That was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced." "You were magnificent." He turned her to face him, pride clear in his eyes. "You stood before the council and defended me. Argued philosophy with vampires centuries old. I have never been more impressed. I was shaking the whole time. I know, that made it even braver." He kissed her softly. "Come, let me show you your new home. My new Konstantin. I still have an apartment, a job, a life, which you are welcome to maintain until your turning. But you will also need chambers here, a place in court. You are my acknowledged mate now. That comes with responsibilities and privileges both." He took her hand, leading her through marble corridors. "If it is too much, too fast. It's completely insane, and I should probably be having a breakdown." Harper laced her fingers through his. "But I'm not. Is that weird?" "I think it is fate." They stopped before an ornate door carved with roses and thorns. "These will be your chambers until we officially share mine. After your turning, we will have the bonding ceremony and—" He paused, uncertain for the first time. "I'm assuming too much. You may not want." Harper pulled him down and kissed him thoroughly, trying to pour everything she felt into the touch. When they broke apart, Konstantin looked pleasantly dazed. "I want," she said firmly, "all of it, the turning, the bonding, the forever. I want it with you." "Then you shall have it." His smile was brilliant. "But first the trials. If I fail, the council may revoke their approval of our union." "Then we won't fail." Harper squeezed his hand. "What do we know about this territory dispute?" Konstantin's eyes lit with something like delight. "We?" "I'm your mate, remember? Your partner, which means your problems are my problems, so territorial dispute. Tell me everything." They spent the next 3 weeks working together to solve the conflict between the eastern and western vampire territories. Harper, it turned out, had a knack for negotiation, probably from years of dealing with difficult restaurant customers. She approached the territorial lords with genuine curiosity, asking questions about their concerns instead of making demands. What emerged was a complex situation rooted in miscommunication and old grudges rather than actual incompatible needs. Harper proposed a shared hunting schedule and joint governance of the disputed area, with both lords rotating responsibility monthly. It took extensive negotiation, several near fights that Konstantin diffused, and one memorable night where Harper got both lords drunk on ancient wine and made them tell embarrassing stories till they were laughing too hard to maintain their feud. But in the end, they agreed. The council's first trial was passed. For the second trial, gaining the loyalty of an opposed faction, Konstantin chose to focus on the young vampires who had fled court to form independent groups. Harper suggested they host a summit, offering concessions and genuine dialogue instead of demands for submission. "You want me to negotiate with rebels?" Konstantin had asked, incredulous. "I want you to listen to them, find out why they left." Maybe they have legitimate grievances." It turned out they did. The young vampires felt stifled by court tradition, unable to adapt to changing human society while bound by ancient rules. Harper proposed a compromise: greater autonomy for young vampires in exchange for maintaining loyalty to the crown and attending court functions quarterly. It worked. Slowly, carefully, the rebel factions began returning not as subjugated servants, but as willing allies. The second trial was passed. The third trial required proposing a policy to strengthen vampire society. For this, Konstantin went bold. "I propose we establish formal diplomatic relations with select human organizations," he announced to the council. "Not revealing ourselves publicly, but creating vetted connections with human leaders in government, technology, and medicine. We have hidden for too long. Controlled integration will serve us better than continued isolation." The council erupted in objections, but Konstantin stood firm. And when Harper spoke, explaining how her own acceptance of the vampire world had been eased by Konstantin's honesty and respect, suggesting that carefully chosen humans could become allies rather than threats, some of the elders actually listened. The vote was close, 9-3 in favor. The third trial was passed. 2 months after that fateful Christmas Eve, Konstantin Bathory was formally reaffirmed as king of the northern courts under the new trial system. The midwinter rite was officially abolished, replaced by the 3 trials of leadership. And 3 months after that, on a spring evening when the world was blooming back to life, Harper Thorne was turned. The process was less painful than she'd feared and more intimate than she'd expected. Konstantin held her through the transition, his blood mingling with hers, his voice steady as her human life ended and her vampire one began. She woke 3 days later in Konstantin's arms, everything sharper and clearer and more. The world was full of sounds and scents she'd never noticed before. Her body thrummed with new strength, new hunger, new awareness. "How do you feel?" Konstantin asked, stroking her hair back from her face. Harper looked at her mate, her king, her love, her forever, and smiled, fangs catching on her lower lip. "Like I'm home." The bonding ceremony was held a week later, once Harper had adjusted to her new form. It was a private affair, despite the political significance, just the council as witnesses, per vampire tradition. Konstantin and Harper exchanged vows in the old language, their blood mingled in a ceremonial chalice, and when they kissed, Harper felt the bond snap into place like a lock finding its key. She was his. He was hers. Forever, eternal, complete. Afterward, there was a feast, the first official gathering that welcomed both vampires and carefully vetted humans. It was held at Konstantin's estate, every room thrown open, every table filled. Harper walked through the celebration in a daze of happiness, still adjusting to her enhanced senses but reveling in the joy around her. "You did this," Konstantin murmured, pulling her onto a balcony overlooking the gardens. "You changed everything." "We did this," Harper corrected. "You were the one brave enough to walk away from the right. I just gave you a push." "You gave me hope." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Before you, I had resigned myself to centuries of cold duty. Now you're stuck with me forever." She turned in his embrace, grinning up at him. "Having regrets yet?" "Never." He kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. "You are the best decision I have ever made, Harper Bathory." Harper Bathory. She was still getting used to the name, to her new life, to the reality of forever. But standing here with Konstantin, looking out at a celebration that bridged the gap between human and vampire, she knew she'd made the right choice. "I love you," she said softly. "I love you," he echoed. "My heart, my mate, my queen." "Queen?" Harper pulled back, eyes wide. "I'm not Konstantin. I've been a vampire for 3 weeks. I can't be queen. You are my acknowledged mate. That makes you queen consort at minimum." His eyes sparkled with amusement. "Did you not realize?" "I know. I thought I'd just be, I don't know, your vampire wife. You are vampire royalty now, beloved, with all the duties and privileges that entails." He kissed her again before she could protest further. "But we will ease you into it. You have eternity to learn." Eternity. The word should have been overwhelming, but instead, it felt like a gift. Eternity with this man, this life, this new world she was still discovering. "Okay," Harper said, settling back into his arms. "Eternity. I can work with that." They stood on the balcony for a long time, watching the snow begin to fall, the first snow of December, almost a year since that fateful Christmas Eve. Through the windows behind them, the party continued, humans and vampires mingling in a way that would have been unthinkable before Konstantin's reforms. "Next year," Harper said suddenly, "we're opening the estate for Christmas, a real celebration. Everyone invited, court members, rebel factions, trusted humans, everyone. No one spends Christmas alone." Konstantin smiled against her hair. "As you wish, my queen. And we're getting a bigger tree, naturally. And I'm teaching you how to untangle lights properly. You're terrible at it. I'm a 400-year-old vampire king. I have led armies and reshaped empires. Surely I can manage Christmas lights." Harper laughed, the sound bright and free. "We'll see about that." The next Christmas was indeed held at the estate. Harper had transformed the entire mansion into a winter wonderland, with evergreen boughs on every surface, candles in every window, and yes, a massive tree that took 3 vampires and 2 humans to carry into the great hall. Konstantin had attempted to help with the lights and given up after 10 minutes, instead supervising while Harper and a young vampire named Seraphine managed the decorating. The feast was magnificent food for the humans, fine wines and blood vintages for the vampires, and entertainment from both worlds. Harper had even convinced a local string quartet to perform, their music filling the ancient halls with warmth. As midnight approached, she found Konstantin in his study, reviewing documents even on Christmas. "You're missing the party," she chided, perching on the edge of his desk. "I am ensuring the party can continue safely. Security reports, guest manifests." Harper plucked the papers from his hands. "Delicate. That's what the council is for." "The council is currently drunk on eggnog in the ballroom. Isolde is teaching humans how to waltz. I watched Lucian lose a card game to your former manager from the restaurant. Delegating seems unwise at present." She laughed, delighted. "It sounds perfect. It sounds like chaos. It sounds like family." Harper slid off the desk and into his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Come back to the party. Dance with me. We can worry about security tomorrow." Konstantin studied her face, taking in the joy there, the absolute contentment, and felt his careful control soften. "Very well. 1 dance. At least 3. 2. 4, and that's my final offer." He laughed, genuine and surprised. "How did I ever resist you?" "You didn't. I'm very persuasive." Harper kissed him softly. "Now come on, it's Christmas, and I want to dance with my husband." They returned to the ballroom together, hand in hand. The party was indeed chaotic, vampires and humans mingling freely, laughter and music filling the air, Isolde attempting to teach a very confused human boy the steps to a waltz that had been popular in the 1700s. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Konstantin pulled Harper into his arms as the quartet began a slow piece, and they swayed together in the center of the room. Other couples joined them, vampire with vampire, human with human, and yes, a few mixed pairs that would have been scandalous before the reforms. "Thank you," Konstantin murmured against her ear. "For what?" "For this, for everything, for working Christmas Eve alone so that I would find you." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "For being brave enough to fall in love with a monster." "You're not a monster. You're my king, my love, my home." Harper smiled, fangs flashing. "Besides, I was just a lonely waitress. You made me a queen." "You were never just anything," he corrected gently. "You were always extraordinary. I simply gave you a stage worthy of your light." They danced until dawn approached and the human guests began to depart, tired and happy and full of stories they could never fully tell. The vampires retreated to their chambers to avoid the coming sun. Harper and Konstantin stood in the great hall, surveying the beautiful wreckage of the party, empty glasses and scattered flowers, and a general air of having been thoroughly lived in. "Same time next year?" Harper asked. "Every year," Konstantin promised, "for eternity." And as they walked together toward their chambers, the first rays of sunlight filtering through heavy curtains, Harper thought about Christmas Eve a year ago, about being alone in an empty restaurant, convinced she would always be alone, about a mysterious phone call and a vampire king who reserved every table just so she wouldn't have to serve empty chairs. She thought about how a single act of kindness had changed everything, how loneliness had transformed into love, isolation into family, despair into hope. "What are you thinking?" Konstantin asked, noticing her smile. "I'm thinking I'm glad you can't eat food," Harper said. "Otherwise you never would have come to Lumiere, never would have heard me mention my mother, never would have called that night." "Fate would have found another way," he said with certainty. "Some paths are inevitable. Ours was one of them." Maybe he was right. Maybe they had always been meant to find each other, the lonely vampire king and the grieving waitress, two souls searching for connection in the darkness. All Harper knew was that she had walked into that restaurant on Christmas Eve, expecting nothing, and walked out with everything, with love, with purpose, with a future that stretched ahead in an endless glittering promise, with home. "Merry Christmas, Konstantin," she whispered as they entered their chambers, shutting out the dawn. "Merry Christmas, my heart," he replied, pulling her close, "the first of many." And it was. Year after year, the Christmas celebration at the Bathory estate grew larger and more legendary. It became a symbol of the new era vampire and human working together, old traditions evolving into something better. Young vampires came from across the world to see the court where a human had stood before elders and argued for change, where a king had chosen compassion over cruelty. Harper threw herself into her role as queen consort, championing reforms and advocating for continued integration. She established programs to help newly turned vampires adjust, created safe channels for human-vampire interaction, and became known throughout the courts for her fairness and fierce protection of those under her care. Konstantin ruled with wisdom and strength, the trials he had completed becoming the standard by which all vampire leaders were judged. Together, they reshaped their world into something neither human nor vampire, but beautifully both. And every Christmas Eve, no matter how busy or complicated their lives became, they returned to Lumiere. The restaurant had never closed after that fateful night. Konstantin had purchased it quietly, ensuring it remained open year-round. On Christmas Eve, they reserved every table again, but this time they filled them with anyone who needed a place to belong. Lonely humans, young vampires far from home, anyone who would otherwise spend the holiday alone. It became tradition, the King and Queen's Christmas Eve feast at Lumiere, where no one was turned away and every table was full. 5 years after Harper's turning, as they prepared for another Christmas Eve feast, she stood in the restaurant and thought about how far they'd come. How much had changed since the night she'd worked alone, polishing glasses for customers who would never arrive. "Ready?" Konstantin asked, appearing at her side with that supernatural silence she'd learned to expect. Harper looked at the tables filling with guests, human and vampire alike. She looked at the small tree on the host stand, different from the one Konstantin had stolen, but placed there in memory of it. She looked at her husband, her king, her love, and felt complete. "Ready," she said, taking his hand. They greeted guests together, served wine and blood and laughter in equal measure, and when midnight came and Christmas Day arrived, Konstantin pulled her aside to the same table where they'd first sat together. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small velvet box. "Konstantin, you've already given me everything." "Not everything, not yet." He opened the box to reveal a ring, delicate silver set with a stone that seemed to glow with inner light. "This was my mother's, given to her by my father when they bonded. I have carried it for 4 centuries, waiting for someone worthy of wearing it." Harper's throat tightened. "Your mother's ring. My family is gone, has been gone for longer than I care to remember. But you are my family now, my present and future. And I want you to have this, to carry my history into our eternity." He took her hand, sliding the ring onto her finger beside her bonding band. "You have given me more than you know, Harper. You have given me hope, purpose, joy. You have reminded me that strength and kindness need not be enemies. You have made me better than I was. You made me believe in magic again." Harper whispered, tears, vampire tears, which were rare and precious, sliding down her cheeks. I was so lost. Konstantin, so alone. And you found me. You saved me. We saved each other, he corrected, pulling her close. And we will continue saving each other every day for as long as we exist. They held each other in the warm restaurant, surrounded by the sound of celebration, and Harper knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged. Not in the empty apartment she'd left behind, not in the half-life she'd been living before. Here, in the arms of a vampire king who had reserved every table just so she wouldn't be alone. Here, in a love that had transformed them both. Here, in forever. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and white and perfect. Through the window, the world looked clean and new, full of possibility instead of sorrow. And as the church bells tolled the hour, marking Christmas Day, Harper Bathory smiled against her husband's chest and thought about miracles. Not the religious kind, though those had their place, but the everyday miracles, the kind that came from choosing kindness, from taking a risk on connection, from believing that even in the darkest night, someone might be looking for you. The kind that came from a lonely waitress and a lonely king finding each other on Christmas Eve and deciding to never be lonely again. That was the real magic. Not vampires or blood bonds or immortality, though those were wonderful too. The magic was in the choice to love, to trust, to build something beautiful together from the ruins of separate sorrows. "What are you thinking?" Konstantin asked, his voice rumbling in his chest. "I'm thinking this is the best Christmas Eve I've ever had." "Better than last year. We had ice sculptures." "Better than any year." Harper pulled back to look at him. "Because every year with you is the best one yet, and we have infinity ahead of us." Konstantin's smile was radiant, his silver eyes bright with love and promise. "Then let us make it count, my queen, every single moment of forever." "Every single moment," Harper agreed, and they did. Through centuries that followed, through changes and challenges and triumphs, through the evolution of both vampire and human society, Harper and Konstantin built their forever together. They ruled with wisdom and compassion, raised up new generations of vampires who believed in reform over tradition, and created a world where no one had to choose between strength and kindness. But always, every year without fail, they returned to Lumiere on Christmas Eve. They filled every table with those who needed belonging, served wine and blood and hope in equal measure, and remembered the night when a simple act of kindness changed everything. The night a waitress worked alone and a vampire king reserved every table just for her. The night two lonely souls found each other in the darkness and chose to be lonely never again. The night that proved love could bridge any divide, even the one between mortality and eternity, human and vampire, loneliness and home. And in the end, that was the greatest magic of all. Not the powers that came with vampirism, not the political victories or the reformed society. The greatest magic was the simple, profound truth that no one should ever spend Christmas alone, and that sometimes the person who saves you is the one you save in return. Harper and Konstantin knew that better than anyone. They had lived it, built a kingdom on it, staked their eternity on it. And as they stood together in the restaurant on yet another Christmas Eve, centuries after that first meeting, they raised their glasses in a toast. To loneliness conquered, to love discovered, to every table full and every heart home, to forever together. Merry Christmas indeed.